institutions have, is that they would stand up to authoritarian pressure. But across these institutions, we're not seeing that. We're seeing universities pay off bribes. We're seeing companies, media companies, pay off, I would argue, bribes in the case of CBS, ABC. And we're seeing law firms, the people you hire to be tough on your behalf, buckling. What's your perspective, having been in the position of standing up for these institutions from law and journalism? Where do you see this going?
Sure. Before answering that, Jeff, I just want to maybe spend a minute on Times v. Sullivan, because I think what really happened there is instructive to what's going on today and the way Trump is trying to basically maneuver the media. Sullivan came out of an ad in the Times about the civil rights movement, and it basically was about how terrible the police of Montgomery, Alabama were acting towards the civil rights workers and the blacks in the South. And there were some errors there, so that was the defamation. That's what the case was about. But the weird thing, and the point I would make, is why do people sue for defamation? They generally sue for two reasons. The main reason is to make money, right? They've somehow been hurt, and they have the opportunity to get back by getting money from the people who hurt them. That's the reason people sue. That's what defamation is all about. The second reason is to clear your reputation, if indeed something false was said about you. Neither of those reasons were the reason that L.B. Sullivan, the police chief of Montgomery, sued the New York Times. He didn't care about the money, and in the Southern establishment, the fact that it was written that they abused the blacks and the civil rights workers was a positive, not a negative. So his reputation hadn't really been injured. So why did he sue? He sued because he wanted the New York Times and the other national media, which at that time was maybe 6 institutions, because there was no cable, there were no podcasts, there were no blogs. There was basically the Washington Post, Time Magazine, maybe Newsweek, and the 3 main networks. And that was it. There was no CNN, there was no cable TV. They wanted them out of the South, but they wouldn't be reporting on the abuses that the police were harboring on the blacks and the civil rights workers, because then they could continue doing that. If it was going to be reported nationally, pressure was going to be brought to bear on them not to continue with that abusive behavior. And so the whole purpose of this suit was to scare and threaten the media into getting out of Alabama so that there wouldn't be jurisdiction there for these lawsuits. And that way the Times wouldn't be sued, but the Times wouldn't be reporting. So the idea was to chill or to shut up the national media from reporting on what was going on. And in a sense, that's not so different than what's going on today. But in terms of your question, Jeff, the thing that I think is the most notable, and certainly was true in the law firm instance, was the lack of unity, the lack of cohesiveness of the institutions being attacked. If the law firms on day one had gotten together and said no, and the 20 biggest firms were to have done that, this whole effort would have been stopped in its tracks. But instead, each law firm did their own thing. Only 4 basically said no and went to court, and all have won as of this day every motion they've made. But the biggest ones, the ones under the fiercest attack at the beginning, on their own all decided to cave, Paul Weiss being the first and most significant. And the fact that, it's very simple really, that you read all the time, that a bully can win unless everyone he bullizes gets together and fights in a uniform way against him. And I don't think the university has done that very much. The law firms didn't do it at all. And the media